My name is Dennis, and welcome back to another album review. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I have a job that's working me a whole lot, and I just don't always have the time to do things like this that I'd like to do more. But I want to do it more consistently, and so I figured I'll start off with this one. I'm definitely late to the party on it, as I will be for the next while of reviews more than likely, but I'm gonna try and do a mix of more up to date stuff that's just released, and stuff from a few months back that I want to catch up on and still talk about that left an impact on me in some way. So, without further ado, one that some friends of mine have been asking me to talk about is the new Olivia Rodrigo album entitled Sour. To be frank, I really wasn't expecting much going into this record. Many people from her position, where, they get famous on one of these, children's or teenage networks like Nickelodeon or, in her case, Disney Channel, they tend to be a little all over the place, and they may start off a bit promising, but just kind of trail off the deep end. And so I really wasn't expecting a whole lot from this, and I think that was also kind of pushed a little bit harder on my mind with my somewhat lukewarm response to the big single off of it, Driver's License. But I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised. It's not a great record by any means, but it's definitely better than I was expecting, and there's a lot of great things on here that I think show heaps of potential from Olivia Rodrigo. There were a few tracks on here that I legitimately thought were great. For example, the opening cut, Brutal. It's an incredibly fun, hard hitting punk song with some really aggressive vocals that really come out. And what's nice about this is a lot of this album takes place in the narrative sense of her recovering from a very awful breakup for her, whether it be expressing how she feels about this person or expressing her, kind of reflective nature on the relationship as it was, or anything in between, really. That's really what this album focuses on. But this one takes a little bit of a detour, which I thought was really nice. It's really just about being frustrated with how brutal the world is, and especially to those people who are younger, where, they expect you to have this and they expect you to have that, where she expresses frustration of, thoughts of a teenage dream, and, being told that she's too young to have these issues that she has. And just all this frustration and pent up anger is let out in one of the best choruses on this entire record. Not only are the guitar licks engaging, fun, and energetic, but the vocals carry so much passion throughout this entire hook. And I especially love when the instrumentals cut out for a minute just for her to go, God, it's brutal out here. That kind of cutout and that kind of differentiation from the rest of the song that's very loud and in your face to really make that stand out. It's so well done, and I just love the way it's executed. It's an amazing opener that I really, really loved. Deja Vu was another really strong cut for me. I really love the narrative sense of this one, where she kind of takes this common phrase of deja vu and gives it a new meaning in terms of this guy who had left her, moving on to someone else and doing all the same things with her that he had done with Olivia here. And saying essentially, don't you get deja vu when you do all these things with her? And she lists off these specific things that make this whole narrative feel so much more personal. Whether, saying I love you in the verse when listening to, this artist that she had shown him, or, just reflecting on the silly things they did, like watching reruns of Glee was a specific example she gave. And all of these seemingly trivial tasks and activities that she's doing, or that she's listing off having done, means so much, because it's those personal moments and those little things that really make a strong difference. And then to see not only him leave you behind, but then to be experiencing those exact same things with someone else can be really frustrating. Instrumentally, I love the tune on this track. I think those almost I don't quite think they're synths, but they sound synth-like. Those kind of synthy sounds in the chorus I thought were really great. I love the melody that they carry, and that last verse on this song is just phenomenal. It's one of, if not my favorite verses on the entire record. It is so phenomenal. I love her vocal performance on here, and just the energy and the passion in her voice carry through so well, and they really do an amazing job on this track. And the other cut that I thought was really like outstanding was towards the end of the record, Jealousy Jealousy. It has a really slick, a really smooth, and a really enjoyable bass line to it. It's a lot of fun to listen to, and I think that bass line really does carry the song in a lot of ways, but I mean, I'm here for it. It does great. It does a really great job. And not only that, but again, she continues to have this amazing vocal performance on here, and some really surprisingly nuanced narrative on here, where, again, it kind of breaks that mold of the breakup stories and goes for her being jealous of everyone around her. And it still does tie into these themes of breakups where, one of the things she's jealous of is, how she's got a pretty face and a pretty boyfriend too, and how badly, that she wants to be this person, while still acknowledging how self-destructive and unhealthy this mindset is. Even saying that it's killing her slowly. It's a very self-aware cut that's very well written, and it has a phenomenal instrumental on it that I really just can't get enough of. However, that's not to say that everything on this album is that good. Again, these were the major highlights for me, and there were definitely a few cuts on here that I thought could have been significantly better. As I alluded to earlier on, the song Driver's License was a bit lukewarm for me, and it has grown on me quite a bit. I do really love the narrative, again, of her being very specific with this very particular instance that causes her so much pain, of how, her and this guy talked about her getting her driver's license and how exciting it would be for them to finally do so much stuff together, and now that she finally has it, they're not together, but she still drives by his place where she's used to think, that they would drive by there together. And it's stuff like that that can cause so much pain. And even though I do really love the lyricism and the narrative on here, and her vocal performance is killer, it's an amazingly energetic and passionate vocal performance. The instrumentals just really don't do anything for me. The hand clapping percussion and the minimalistic melody that go along with it, to me, just come off as kind of bland. And the last verse just strikes kind of a wrong chord with me. I just don't really enjoy the melody of it. I don't enjoy the tune. I don't really like how her higher register of vocals play into the instrumental. And I just wish it carried a stronger tune with it to make it a bit more interesting and enjoyable, I guess. One Step Forward, Three Steps Back was another weak cut for me. To me, it easily had one of the weakest instrumentals on the entire record. And the narrative of it doesn't do anything that isn't addressed more interestingly on other cuts on here. She's essentially just saying that every time she tries to do something right with this guy, that it seems like it's not enough, and it ends up, again, one step forward, three steps back. But she doesn't really expand on this idea to too much of an interesting idea. There were a couple of moments that I thought were a little bit thought-provoking, where she talks about, how she almost enjoys how unpredictable he is, and it's almost like a game to her whether, she'll be in love or go home crying, which is a really messed up thing to experience, but it's that kind of toxicity and abuse that sometimes we blind ourselves to in relationships that we struggle to see through at first. But even with those glimpses of interesting narrative points here and there, one step forward, three steps back really just does nothing for me. Again, the instrumentals are just so bare bones and bland, with nothing beyond a really uninteresting piano melody. Good For You is another one that's gotten a lot of attraction lately in the mainstream, but again, I just don't really see what's so amazing about this one. Like, it's a decent pop punk tune. I mean, very Paramore-esque, but outside that, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Again, lyrically, I think it's pretty solid. Where, again, she's expressing this frustration and this anger about him seeming to be doing good for himself, and he's being happy and just enjoying his life, and she's like, hey, good for you, you look happy and healthy, but I'm not, not that you would care to ask, but I'm not doing so hot right now. I like how spiteful it is. I like how frustrated it is, and I like the energy she carries. But just the guitars aren't nearly as hard hitting or engaging as they were on a song like Brutal. The tune isn't nearly as catchy or memorable to me. And outside of some passionate performances from her, there really wasn't a whole lot on this song that got me really interested in it. But again, there are other cuts that I enjoyed overall. Early on in the record, the song Traitor I thought was actually pretty good. I thought it presented a really interesting idea in terms of what it means to be faithful and loyal to someone, where, yeah, you may not have cheated on me, but you still developed an emotional bond with her while we were together, and you're still a traitor. I love how passionate she is about emphasizing that word traitor in the chorus. It's really beautiful, and it carries this really gorgeous ballad so well, which I forgot to mention is a beautiful contrast to the opening cut Brutal, which this one comes directly after. It's a nice dichotomy that really gets you into the record and shows you the kind of two extremes of this record, where you have one of the most aggressive and hard hitting cuts on here, Brutal, followed by one of the most mellow and beautiful tracks, which is Traitor. I really liked this dichotomy, and I think it was a great start to the record. And so yeah, Traitor was a really engaging ballad that I enjoyed quite a bit. Happier is also another one in that same vein that I really loved the balladry of it, where it expresses this really complex emotion here of, you know, wanting someone to still do well for themselves even though you don't really want them to do well for themselves because of how they treated you. And she ends up expressing this in what I thought was a really interesting chorus where, she's like, I hope you're happy, but not like how you were with me. Which sounds incredibly selfish and incredibly narcissistic at first, but the more you think about it, the more it really makes sense, I think. Where she's saying, I am more confident in myself now, and I feel strongly about how good I was to you, and I know that you were happy with me at least at some point. And you know what? You decided to leave that behind, and that's okay. And I hope you're happy, but you'll never be happy the same way you were with me. And it's just a really complicated situation where it's impossible to express that without at least coming off a little self absorbed, but it doesn't come off as unrealistic or as frustratingly narcissistic as other artists may have made it out to be. Here it sounds much more compelling, much more even relatable in a way, and very endearing, if nothing else. You really feel her frustration and you understand where she's coming from and why she's feeling this way based on all of the other narrative points of this breakup she brings up throughout the record. The closing two cuts on the album were also just kind of okay for me. Favorite crime, I do really love the vocal harmonies in the chorus, but outside of that, I thought the tune was mediocre, and the lyrics on here just, again, don't do anything or bring anything to the table that other tracks didn't do significantly better. It kind of just brings up the same points as stuff that was on things like Traitor and Happier without any of the nuance, I really think. Even the idea of, being your favorite crime is in, like, we were kind of illegal or kind of under the radar, not really supposed to work, but we were still together happily at first. She doesn't really expand on that in an interesting way, at least not a way that I found to be all that engaging. See, it was just okay. And Hope You're Okay, the closing cut, is similar to Happier, but a little less spiteful, which I thought was a little odd, honestly, because it's kind of like you're playing both sides of the coin here. But still, it's a very complicated situation, and it seems like she's just trying to process all of these emotions and throw out all of her feelings here. Where, at first she's frustrated and angry and everything, and then, she's like, no, I hope you're happy, but not like how you were with me. And then at the end, she's like, you know what, even through all this, I hope that you're okay. And I do love the chorus on this one. Again, vocally, she just does a phenomenal job on here. But again, just the tune of the verses are bland, bare bones, and uninteresting, which I think was a really big letdown because it just doesn't really do a whole lot. And I've heard stuff before about this not being about that guy and about, it's about somebody else, like an old friend or whatnot. But and I see parts of that in some of the verses here and there, but I don't know. I still see the parallels to it being part of the relationship aspect, the breakup, and I don't really see how it being about her friend fits into the narrative of the rest of the record very well. So either way, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me. But yeah, overall, I still enjoyed this record overall. There were plenty of cuts on here that I thought were enjoyable, a handful that I thought were legitimately great, and definitely some weak moments here and there, but I think Olivia Rodrigo has a lot of potential. Her vocals are consistently top tier on this record. Instrumentally, there could use a lot of work. Some of the tunes were weak, and I think they could have been a bit more expansive or engaging instrumentally, but I think she shows a lot of potential. I'd like to see also some more diverse songwriting topics that, even when she does break into other subjects, they still kind of fit within this one realm or this one theme of the record without just kind of focusing on one point over and over again. And I understand why she does that for this record. She's processing a lot of things, and it does come off very honest, very endearing, and very straight to the point, which I think does really good. I loved a lot of the lyricism on here. Again, I just wish it was a bit more diverse at points. There's a lot to love about this record, and there's a lot to grow from it too. So it is far from perfect. It's a very flawed record, and there's a lot of room to grow, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I think Olivia Rodrigo can do a lot going forward from here. I'm feeling a very strong 6, bordering on a light 7, but not quite there. And yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say. If you listen to this record, be sure to tell me what you thought down in the comments below. Tell me how wrong my opinion is, as always, and I'll see you in the next review.